Welcome. We're just waiting a few minutes just to let everyone join us before we begin introductions. Thank you for joining us. Just wait a few more seconds before we begin. We're at 7:01. I'll wait till maybe 7:02 to welcome. I think we are ready to begin. Welcome, and thank you all for joining us this evening for our second lecture in our free online lecture series, The Art of Birds, Avians as Symbols, Stewards, and Storytellers. My name is Jennifer Tafe. I am the director of the Museum of American Bird Art at Mass Audubon. And this is our, as I said, second lecture in our series. We have 3 more lectures to come. The next one is November 7th with Dr. Drew Lanham, and we hope that you'll join us for that. Just go onto our website to register. And we hope you'll join us for all of our lectures in this series. I want to thank our IT manager, AJ Khan, who makes these talks happen. And a very special thank you to Faith and Fred Sandstrom for their very generous support of this series. We will take questions at the end of our lecture tonight, so please put your questions into the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we will get to those towards the end of the evening. So tonight I am delighted to introduce our speaker, Dr. Mary Jo Arnoldi, and her presentation, Malian Birds Are Good to Think, Avian Imagery in West African Art. Dr. Arnoldi holds a PhD from Indiana University in African Art History. She is the Curator Emerita for African Arts and Ethnology at the National Museum of Natural History at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. She has been doing research on arts and performance in Mali, Senegal, and the Gambia for over 40 years. Mary Jo has published numerous articles and books on Malian puppetry, arts and performance, and on African art and material culture. She was the lead curator on the permanent exhibition African Voices at the Natural History Museum at the Smithsonian, marking really a philosophical shift in the museum's exhibit practices, really giving voice to Africans in that exhibition. She also co-curated the Mud Masons of Mali exhibition and Objects of Wonder a little more recently at the museum. Co-curated the traveling exhibition Crowning Achievements, African Arts of Dressing the Head. And she co-curated the Mali program from Timbuktu to Washington on the National Mall for the Smithsonian's Folklife Festival in 2003. And I am delighted to call her a friend and a colleague. Please join us in welcoming Dr. Mary Jo Arnoldi.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm delighted to be here. And when Jennifer invited me to give this lecture, I was intrigued because I've worked with representations and interpretations of animals in the visual and verbal and performative arts of Mande peoples for over the past 40 years. But I had never specifically focused just on birds. This lecture gave me the opportunity to re-examine my own field notes and to dig deeply into the many excellent studies by my colleagues, historians, linguists, anthropologists, zoologists, art historians, and artists, to pull together this rich body of Malian bird lore, a small part of which I'd like to share with you this evening. Let's see if I can. There's screen. Okay. Okay, I think I'm on. To paraphrase the late French anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss, Malian birds are good to think with. In Mali, there are over 600 species of birds, and they hold a special place in the lives of Mande peoples in the country. According to the Mande creation myth, when the first ancestors died, they transformed themselves into birds, and through divination, the living can tap their celestial knowledge. Birds are often said to be creatures that have enormous nyama, the Mande term for life force or a creative force, and they're associated with great intelligence. In rural areas where I mainly worked, ducks, geese, swallows, and storks, like the Avian stork on your screen, are recognized as heralds of the all-important annual change from the dry to the rainy season. Other birds play important roles in traditional medicine practices. And many birds appear prominently in Mande proverbs, in the epics of Mali's great empires, in songs and morality tales, and as characters in masquerade performances. Birds serve as powerful symbols of deeply held cultural values and as a commentary not only about the natural world and our relationship to it, but as metaphors and symbols for a whole range of human values and relationships. Before we turn to Malian birds in art and life, let me give you a brief overview of the geography and demographics of Mali. Mali, as you can see on the large map of Africa on your screen, is a landlocked country in West Africa, and it's the 8th largest country land-wise on the continent. Today, its population is over 24 million, with nearly 50% of its people under the age of 15. Its capital and largest city is Bamako. The country has 13 official languages, of which Bamana is the most commonly spoken, although French is a frequent lingua franca. Over 70% of Malians live in rural areas where they engage in farming, fishing, and animal husbandry for their livelihoods. There are 3 ecological zones in Mali, and I'm sort of covering part of my slide here, but this northern part is the northern desert, which has high temperatures, variability, and long dry seasons. Although with climate change, that is shifting a bit, and there's been a lot more rain up in the desert recently. A central region here is a Sahelian region, and it has 2 major rivers and an inland delta. The other river isn't located in here, but here's the delta, which is rich in bird species, and also a southern tropical forest area right down in here, which also has a large variety of bird species. This evening, I'll be concentrating on the verbal and visual arts of Mande-speaking peoples and their neighbors who live in this central Sahelian and forest region in the central and southern part of Mali, as these are the groups that I've worked with the most over the last 40 years. Mali has a rich history of powerful empires. The Mali Empire, which dominated the lands from Mali to the Atlantic Ocean from the 10th to 15th century. At its peak in the 14th century, the Mali Empire was the wealthiest in Africa, whose 14th century emperor, Mansa Musa, ruled between 1312 and 1337. And this is a page out of an encyclopedia, a Spanish encyclopedia, period. What it translates is this Black Lord is called Musamele, and he is the sovereign of the land of the Black people of Geneva, Ghana. This king is the richest and noblest of all these lands due to the abundance of gold that is extracted from his lands. It is believed that Mansa Musa was one of the wealthiest individuals in the world at this time. Besides being a hub of trade and gold mining, medieval Mali was a center of Islam, culture, and knowledge, with Timbuktu to the north becoming a renowned place of learning with its university, one of the oldest universities in the world. In 1352, the Moroccan geographer Ibn Battuta visited the court of Mansa Musa's successor, Mansa Suleiman. Ibn Battuta wrote in his journal, on feast days, the poets come in. Each of them is inside a figure resembling a thrush, made of feathers and provided with a wooden head with a red beak to look like a thrush's head. They stand in front of the Sultan and recite their poems. I was told that their poems are a kind of sermonizing in which they say to the Sultan, this throne on which you occupy was that wherein sat this king, and such were the one's noble actions, and such were the others. So do you too do good deeds, whose memory will outlive you. I was told this practice is a very old custom amongst them prior to Islam, and that they have kept it up. Who are the descendants of these medieval birds? In Mande society, they are Jelly or Griot, hereditary historians whose recitations of the family genealogies embedded in the great Mande epics are considered the most potent and powerful of their hereditary duties. The Jelly, men and women, are often called birds, not only for the quality of their singing and recitation, but because of the deep knowledge they bring to these recitations. Jelly remain important public voices today for the transmission of news and announcements, mediators in disputes, witnesses at every important life ritual, and society's premier musical and verbal artists. Alongside the Jelly are the hunter's bards. You can see a hunter's bard on the right of your screen. While they are not a hereditary group, they are also singers of the hunter's epics. And like the Jelly, they are often praised as birds. Yeah. Nope. Okay. Zootherapy, or birds in traditional medicine, play a prominent role in medical practices, and birds and bird parts are part of the trade, legal and illegal, in animal products. In general, small birds such as finches, starlings, weavers, and others are sold as whole dead animals, with the occasional live specimen being offered for sale in the medicine market. Larger birds, such as raptors, hornbills, and the like, follow a similar pattern. However, they are most frequently sold by specific parts, with their heads being the most sought after. Two birds that are often sought after are the black-crowned crane and the vulture. The black-crowned crane is sought after as traditional medicine by customers primarily in the Middle East, North Africa, and in Europe. The crown crane's head is said to aid in acquiring and maintaining wealth and improving one's social status and gaining power. The bird's neck is used as medicine to cure throat diseases and infections and to improve the quality of the voice. Legs and bones are used to prepare medicines for rheumatism, while the bird wings aid in acquiring wealth and social status. Malians themselves make up only a small percent of customers for the bird parts of the black-crowned crane, as although live cranes are often domesticated by Malians, conferring on the household a measure of social prestige as symbols of wealth. In Mali today, the population of the black-crowned cranes is designated as an endangered species, and the government has enacted specific legislation for the protection of these birds. Hooded vultures. The hooded vulture is also a greatly prized in traditional medicine. The hooded vulture's head, followed by feathers and bones, are the most sought after of the vulture's parts. The body parts are reportedly used to bring good luck, to treat illnesses like asthma, and to offer people protection. The bones are used to make ointments, to treat skin diseases. The feathers are used to treat earaches and sickle cell disease. Vultures also appear regularly in proverbs, morality tales, and in the epics. The black-headed weaver. The proverb, which you might all recognize and which is fairly widespread in the world, is a proverb that basically translates, slowly, slowly, the little bird builds its nest. The proverb extols the virtue of patience and industriousness in any endeavor. While the weaver is never specifically named in the proverb, I always think of it and its intricate woven nest when I hear the proverb in Malian society. The guinea fowl is another bird that is extolled in proverbs. The proverb cautions that you can judge a bird by its feathers, but people are much more difficult to get to know. The proverb translates, the true colors of a person are inside, those of a guinea fowl outside. The hooded vulture appears in numerous oral arts in Mali. Its morality tales, its wiliness, its patience, and its longevity are the features that are most celebrated. Duga the vulture is one of the oldest and most widespread praise songs for warriors and hunters that celebrates heroism. The praise song, King Vulture may set upon anything, but nothing sets upon old King Vulture, is said to have been first sung for the king of Kore. But when Damonzon, the ruler of 19th century Segu Empire, defeated him in battle, his song became the property of the victor and is incorporated now in the epic for Damonzon Jara. Duga was customarily sung for the warriors and hunters who killed either a lion, an elephant, or for warriors who killed another warrior in battle. Hunters and warriors modeled their hats after the head of the vulture as an emulation of this hunting bird. A proverb states, the hunter's hat looked nice on the hunter. The vulture says it looks nice on him too. In one popular tale about the ostrich, all the animals came together for a festival. Although every animal danced, none could surpass the dancing of the ostrich. The other animals began to sing its praises and bestowed the title of hero onto the ostrich. The moral of this tale in life is that no individual should sing his own praises, for it is only his peers that can give him a hero's praise name. Nyama, the Mande word for life force or creative power, is associated with many birds, as birds are considered to have enormous stores of this creative life force. These include the great hummingbirds, the eagles, the pelicans, the raptors, among others. The marabou stork is considered a master hunter and a seer. Black and white, darkness and light, the bird that sees behind the river and sees before the river. The marabou stork's double vision, one eye looking in one direction, the other eye in another, is symbolic of the wisdom of the seer, who penetrates the darkness of the unknown to arrive at the light of understanding. Of the stork, it said, its beak is long, but it is not a fisher bird. Should you see it on the rocky plain, it is not done for ruse. It is not done from ignorance. The fool is not crafty for nothing. Digon, the Mande name for the marabou stork, is a praise name given to master hunters and to soma, or seers. Hunters are often called birds for their extensive knowledge of the natural world and for their abilities to manage unseen forces. Hunters must have extensive knowledge of the local flora and fauna, but they must also have the means to engage occult knowledge in order to manage supernatural forces in the wild. In the hunter's epic of Imagery, it is his ability to control the occult that is the key to his success. The hunter's bard sings, "He who controls no occult power does not become a hunter. He who has no occult knowledge does not become a hunter. He who has no changing power does not become a hunter. Such hunting would not be true hunting." The barn owl and other species of owls, like the marabou stork, are also considered seers, birds who penetrate the darkness to arrive at the light of knowledge. Turako, or dole, is not a hunter, but it embodies enormous creative life force. It is renowned for its great beauty, and the bird symbolizes divinity and is considered a master of speech. Bird characters appear in a variety of masquerades. In farmers and fishermen villages in the Segu region of central Mali, annual masquerades organized by village youth associations mark the change of seasons, rainy season and dry season. The short rainy season is the time for farming, and the longer dry season is the traditional hunting season. Hunting and the celebration of hunters as society's heroes is a major theme woven throughout these youth association performances. Most of the masks and puppets performed represent wild animals, including elephants, bush buffalo, wildcats, antelopes, hippos, crocodile, and as birds, as you can see on these two puppets. Here are the birds that are on cattle and on animals, follow animals, and here is a puppet of a hunter hunting a bird. Young men are the masqueraders and the drummers, and women are the singers for these performances, and their songs are the voices of the masquerades. The community defines these masquerades as entertainment and play, where innovation across generation is a hallmark of the genre. These performances, however, are serious play, as the themes provide the community with a moral commentary on history, on ethnicity, and on the range of human relationships including the all-important relationships between animals and men. The original owners of this youth association masquerade were the fishermen. Among the fishermen, Baninkono, a bird masquerade, is one of the oldest and most important of their masquerades. And here is the Baninkono masquerade in a pirogue being brought into the village for a performance. In the 1870s, Paul Soyer, a French geographer, was traveling up the Niger River in late September and came upon a performance. He wrote, about 3:45 in the afternoon, I passed by the Bambara village of Mongonogo, and I stopped there. Why? To see guignol. A square tent of white and blue striped fabric is installed in a boat with two paddlers. An ostrich head fixed upon a long neck extends from its front. It draws itself up, grows taller, drops, shrinks, turns to the right, turns to the left with an air of curious and anxious expectation. Then two marionettes appear suddenly out of the middle of the tent, one clothed in red, the other in blue, and they abandon themselves to some grotesque pantomimes. The drums, placed in a second boat, accompany the spectacle with deafening music. Among the Bambara, this game is called Kono Donkoli, or the bird song. Soyer described the masquerade being taken from the boat into a large clearing into the village where the performance continues. This same masquerade is still being played in fishermen villages along the river Niger 140 years later after his account. Baninkono is the bird that was in the boat. And in this song, this Kono, the bird from Kirena, has come. The people here have not seen it. I say there is one God and Muhammad is his prophet. I say, whose bird is it? It's Fatmata, Yaro's bird. It's Kanbe Bakari's bird. In this song, the stork is praised as the bird of Kirena. This reference recalls the Battle of Kirena and the founding of the Malian Empire under Sunjata Keita. After the battle, Sunjata Keita granted fishermen the rights as masters of all the waters for their support in defeating his enemies. The song also includes the name of two heroic ancestors from this fisherman's village. Mali Kono is a relatively new character created in 1960 to celebrate Malian independence from French colonial rule. Mali Kono, you bird, you are welcome. Mali Kono, you are popular. Bird of the river water has inundated the terrain. Bird of the river, the animal has no place left to lie down. Its song speaks of a landscape inundated with the rains. The start of the rainy season is called San Yelima in Mande, or the year turns over. It marks the Mande New Year, a new beginning. This seems pretty appropriate as a celebration of the new country of Mali's independence from the French in 1960. The bird enters the arena, it moves, swirls around, raises its wings, dips as the fisher bird, and moves to the delight of the crowd. What I wanted to do here is give you a sense of the birds or the women singers and the song of the Mali Kono in performance. These performances go on for 3 days, afternoons and late into the evening on all 3 days. And especially the rainy season performance, celebrates the new year for the entire community. Birds that are also featured in contemporary art in Mali. The internationally renowned artist Abdoulaye Konate uses bird imagery in his magnificent textile tapestries. The L'Oiseau Rouge, which is a representation of the Mali firefinch, is a bird that Abdoulaye says he had grown up looking at his entire life. The Mali firefinch is the national bird of Mali. I also love one of his tapestries based on the guinea fowl. And of course, it speaks to the proverb that you can know the bird by its feather, but you can't know a person's insides. I would like to close with this photo of a group of young Malian students perched in a fallen tree. These are the students who participated in a project in Mali to document their community through photography. It was led by my colleague, Sean Davis, who curated an exhibition, Visual Griots, featuring these students' photographs and their commentary. It opened in the Smithsonian in 2000 at the Museum of Natural History. The then president of Mali, Amadou Toumani Touré, visited the exhibit. And when he saw the photo of the students, he remarked without hesitation, "En Kononi, our little birds." For me, Toumani Touré's exclamation signals how deeply held the association of griots is with birds in Mande society and with wisdom and knowledge. And in this instance, the depth of knowledge that was on display in these students' intimate photographs of their families and communities. Thank you. I think I finished a little early, but that leaves us some time for question and answer. And I have some questions to ask your audience.
Please. Thank you so much, Mary Jo. That was fascinating and just such striking imagery. If you have questions for Dr. Arnoldi, please put them into the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we will get to those. But so you had a question for our audience?
Right. I don't know. Can I get back to the slide, the last slide here?
Sure.
I'll let the magic happen.
Just reshare.
Oh, do reshare. Okay.
Look at that final slide.
I wanted to ask your audience of knowledgeable ornithologists. The masquerade for Mali Kono has always puzzled me a bit as to what species of bird it might represent. On one hand, it's clearly for me a raptor by the shape of its beak. And one thing that working with sculptors and their representation of animals in these puppet masquerades, they were very clear to pick out particular features that would identify the animal. The African fish eagle is very prominent throughout this area, and it's a fisher bird. And so it struck me that perhaps the artist was looking to the fish eagle as his inspiration. But another bird that's also very prominent and appears a lot as a harbinger of the rainy season is the hornbill with this peculiar crown at the top. So does anyone in your audience have any thoughts they might like to share with me? I'd love to hear them.
Yes, please. I wonder if, is there anything to the way that they're used to tell you more about what the species might be, right? How they act in performance and their sort of
Yeah,
role in
the
those
Mali
masquerades.
the Mali dips when it comes out. It spreads its wings and then it dips as if it's fishing. Or the hornbill also is, it's not a fishing bird, but it also, dips to get insects and other small vertebrates. So it is a hunting bird. My sense is that it could be because the song is clearly about the rainy season. But for both the hornbill and the fish and the birds in this area, when the land gets inundated, they often migrate out until the dry season because there's no place to land. So part of the song talks about that. So I'm just curious if people, who are familiar with birds, certainly more than I am in your audience, might have some thoughts about who this Mali might be.
Well, let us know in the Q&A if you have some. We have a couple of other questions though, so we'll let that simmer for a little bit.
Okay.
We have one question. What is the name of the person who did the tapestries? So I think
That is the artist Abdoulaye Konate. He is an extraordinary artist whose work is in the Metropolitan Museum of Art and in many museums. He's had major exhibitions in Europe and in the United States. Textiles are really important in Mali, and Abdoulaye has chosen to use textiles in creating what he calls his paintings in textiles. And one of the things, some are very, very abstract, but he always pulls on the past or on his identity as a Mande person. And so I was intrigued with this whole series of the guinea fowl, because I know how often that proverb is actually said, to people. And not being it, you can know a bird by its feathers, but you can't know the inside of a person. A person is much more difficult to know. And I thought his whole series on the guinea fowl being terribly abstract meant immediate visual meaning to Mande people, perhaps not as well understood, in the international arena, but it's a beautiful painting. And then the little red bird is something that he grew up in more of the northern part of Mali as you're approaching the desert. And so that beautiful bird, red bird in the landscape, is something as an artist he always focused on. And so he paid homage to that little bird in that wonderful tapestry. But he does many, many tapestries. He is an extraordinary artist. He also tackles some really hard issues of emigration of young people out of Mali, of AIDS, of dictatorships and government gone wrong. I mean, he's quite a versatile artist, and I've known him now for 30 years, and he's just an amazing artist.
work is incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
If anyone is interested, we have put the name of the artist into the chat there so that you can find
You
him.
can look, there's a lot written on him, so you can Google him and get a lot of information on him.
Couple more questions. How prevalent today is the use of bird parts for medicine in Mali, and how does that affect conservation of birds?
That's a good question. There are There are medicine markets. There's a major one in the capital city. A lot of the traditional medicine is actually flora and not fauna, so it's botanical medicines. There are, the vulture, for instance, is not an endangered species. So it's, I mean, people hedge their bets. Let's put it this way. I always think Malians are great at hedging their bets. They'll go to a traditional medicine person, but they'll also go to a Western clinic and the hospital there. So they're hedging their bets in terms of treatment. A lot of the ointments and things that are rendered from plants and from animal bones, etc., are good ointments with oils for treating a lot of skin diseases. And people have a lot of skin issues because it's so dry and skin gets cracked. But they also use a lot of plant oils. They use a lot. So I tended to work more with women who did medicines with plants than I did with men who worked with animal parts. But animal parts are also used by people who are known as soma or seers. So they're used in divination. Hunters use a lot of animal parts as protection. So if you remember the hunter's tunic, there are all kinds of animal parts and bird beaks and things that are attached to the tunic. And that's that sort of control of the creative force that's released when animals are killed, that a hunter has to manage to protect the community, himself and the community, from those forces. So when an animal is killed, a hunter praises the animal in order to control that creative energy that's released when an animal is killed, which is very dangerous to the community.
Thank you.
Hunters are fascinating people.
Yeah, yes, it seems like it. Are there any predatory waterfowl that may be in the area during the rainy season?
Well, the African fish eagle is a fishing bird, but during the rainy season, the rivers have not risen yet. So where I worked, which was between Segu and Mopti, which is up. So when the rains start, the Niger starts in Guinea. Its source is in the south of Mali. And Guinea has a longer rainy season. So the rivers start building and move up. So the water begins to flow north, okay, up the Niger. And so it's really at the beginning of the dry season when many of the migratory birds that are also fishing birds return to the area. So I've seen the hawks and the eagles and the osprey and stuff, but I can't tell you who's there. I'm not sure who stays year round. I know a lot of the birds migrate. Yeah.
How about the sort of what you have learned over all of your years traveling to these West African spaces, how you have seen the art evolve? If there have been changes in materials or in the masquerades or just over that time, what are some of the more sort of significant changes you may have seen?
Yeah, there are. What's interesting to me is whether you're someone in the village, like the young men who are creating the masquerades, the puppet masquerades, which have a long history of, we know, pre-colonial history. And I think that they emerged out of hunters' masquerades, actually, and because their focus is really on the flora and fauna and man's relationship to the wild and the animals in the wild, both the birds and other animals. those have evolved with new characters coming in. So now there are masquerades of airplanes and masquerades of um, all kinds of contemporary masquerades, and a lot of masquerades that are based on animal characters, but are really focused on relationships within the community. So that the songs are really about how one's relationship within the community. Then there are lots of wonderful masquerades of women now, which are only things that started probably in the 20s and 30s, more of the female masquerades. But what I love about it is the men have one interpretation of those masquerades and the women have quite a different interpretation. There's a masquerade called the New Bride, right? And so the women, because it's polygamous and there are multiple wives in a household, the tensions are often high in a household for women because one's resources, you're for your children, you're vying with each other for the resources for your children. And men think of this woman as the new bride, as the wonderful new addition to the household. Women have quite a different take on the new bride, and they call her the wife with whose mosquito net doesn't have any holes because she's new to the family. And the older women have been there longer so that their mosquito nets have holes. And it's all about her sexual attraction to her husband, which pushes the other wives aside. So it's a really interesting play that men and women have within this. But that's another thing. And then the artists like Abdullah Kanate and a lot of the artists, contemporary artists, while they may be looking at other modes of representation that are more global in painting or in sculpture, they also are drawing on this deep knowledge of their own identity and culture, so that it tends to reemerge in really interesting ways. I'm always fascinated the way Abdullah works with memory and deep cultural knowledge.
Excellent. I have a couple more questions here. One of our audience members says, I recall seeing many wooden masks in southern Mali with birds on them from the Senufo people, who I think also live in northern Cote d'Ivoire. Do you have any insight into these bird representations?
Right. One of the major Senufo birds on the mask that you've seen is the hornbill, which is considered a sacred bird among the Senufo. And so that is a bird that appears in much of the ritual and in men's society masquerades. And men's society there, the Poro is a major association of men in a patriarchy. They are the leaders of the village and the community, and they control a lot of the political and jural events within in a village still today. So the hornbill, I think, is probably the most important bird that you'll see in Senufo masquerade. And he's a fascinating bird. I mean, just a fascinating bird.
look at that bird. Yeah, hornbills are incredible. And of course, so many other traditions have used hornbill for decoration and to make into decorative objects and things. One more question, and this one is great. What sparked your interest in this part of Africa?
Oh, okay. Well, I was an art history studio art major as an undergraduate, probably when most of you weren't born yet, and who might be in the audience. And I was accepted in graduate school to study early Flemish painting. That was going to be my focus. And I was struck by Kennedy's call for the Peace Corps. And so after I graduated from college, I went to Senegal in West Africa. I was signed to Senegal in West Africa for 2 years in the Peace Corps and lost my heart to Africa and African cultures. And I came back and went on to graduate school. And Mali, which is so rich in verbal and visual arts and in performance arts, really captured my attention. I had traveled there in 1972, and I returned there and have been returning there as often as I can over the past 30 or 40 years. So yeah, I left my heart in West Africa. Yeah.
Well, we're glad. We're glad. Thank you so much.
Now, did any of your audience can help me with this bird identification?
We don't have any brave souls.
Just be
but
brave.
we can pass it around maybe to some of our colleagues, our
Yeah,
experts.
yeah. I
This,
should
this,
just go down to the ornithology department in natural history and
yeah, we
knock
can
on
figure it out.
doors, you know.
Yeah,
Open
we do have
cases.
a quick late submission. One of our audience members says, head of the hornbill, but beak of the eagle. So how about you speak to that? Or is it possible
That.
that we have a kind of an amalgam?
Yeah, that would make sense for a sculptor. And then people would recognize the two different species. And both are extremely important in terms of the Sanyelama, the New Year's, the beginning of the rainy season, which is the beginning of life for the community every year. And having it represent that combination, having it represent independence and a new republic is clearly makes sense to me, you know. But I think when we're all looking at art, we can read a little bit of our own, sort of magic into it. And because I know it's a favorite masquerade for the community I work in, and it just is joyous, and people run out into the arena and dance with it and praise it. And, it's an important masquerade to celebrate independence.
Well, this has all been really fascinating, and I'm so thrilled that you were able to join us, Mary Jo, and I hope that everyone enjoyed it, and we hope that you'll join us for our next lecture on November 7th with Dr. Drew Lanham. And thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.